the purpose within the church. We have passed through, and now we're to the problem with the church. Let's start with a quick word of prayer, and that is the problem within the church is, if any man come to me and hate not his father or mother and wife and children and brethren and sister, yea, in his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. For whosoever doth not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. In our study today, talking about the way that God divinely designed the local church from root to shoot to bear the fruit, so that the fruit would go out in order to do what? To die, and it would put down roots to carry shoot, to bear more fruit, and that fruit cycle would continue to remain. Matthew chapter 28, go and make disciples. Go and teach all nations. The idea is that of disciple making is missionary making, intentional, purposeful. So what's the problem within the church? The problem within the church, I believe, is in the making of disciple. There are two kinds of problems: road blockades and engine trouble. That means that there are external problems on the road and there are internal problems in the heart. What's the problem within the church? Why disciples are not being made as missionaries who desire to go to the unreached or anywhere? One is relationships, the second is responsibilities, and the third is religion. The first, let's consider relationships. Out of these relationships, I believe that the majority of the problems come with three types of relationships. Number one, parents. Number two, spouses. Number three, children. And so number one down. But the second one is responsibilities. Debts, possessions, and dreams. So number one is debts. Why are we not seeing disciples as missionaries going to the uttermost or anywhere? Because of relationships, but secondly, because of responsibilities. And one of those responsibilities is to the debt that they have incurred. Could be school debt, could be a house debt, could be credit card debt, could be medical needs or medical debt, either due to bad financial planning or bad financial spending, or it could be because of bad financial advice that they got. But really, honestly, it could also simply be because of unavoidable circumstances of life. I have a friend I consider to be a good friend. Well, what is spent for their child's health needs is literally hundreds of thousands of dollars. There are unavoidable circumstances of life. Now, I put some verses down there. We're not going to go there, but you can go there to think more about this point in those verses. 1 Corinthians 9, where a preacher is to be temperate. Philippians 4, God supplies all of our needs according to His riches and glory. One way or the other is, it goes back to the question, could we or would we? Could we or would we? What kind of debt is too insurmountable for God to take care of if you will trust Him in faith and you will seek and find a way to move forward with His will? And then God responds with, well, you know, I have sufficient riches and glory in order to meet that need. I just needed to test your faith to see if you are ready to go. Were you going to cower at the waves in the boat, or as the waves come, were you going to say, what manner of man is this? Test of faith. But number two is possessions. Well, we can't go because we own a home, because we own property, because we own a business, or we have X amount of money invested in my 401k. Thirdly, what about dreams? My dream is to live happy, or to live healthy, or just to live harmlessly, right? That's my dream. That's my hopes. That's my desires. That's what I planned for. And you're telling me that you want me to lay down the dreams that I got an education for, that I got a good start for. No debt, but wow, lay down my dream. This is what I want to see when I come to the end of my life. that is when I'll have time then to go and be a missionary to the foreign field or in an unreached people group. Come back in 20 years. I'm not mocking, by the way, when I say that. Unfortunately, these are things that I have been told. I was recruiting at one Bible college, and there was a beautiful couple, been married a short period of time. And they sought an audience with me, with GFF. We want to be missionaries, but this is how we want to do it. And they were sincere. I'm going to work as an engineer, and my income automatically is going to be this. My wife is going to go to work as a nurse or an RN or registered nurse or something along that, and she's going to have this type of pay. We're going to be able to afford to be missionaries. Right? Oh, yeah. We want to go for the summer every other year to the most needy countries where I can help with my engineering, and she can help with her nursing, and at the end of the summer, we want to come home back to, and he didn't say this, but our 50,000 square foot home with our nice fence and in our nice gated community in the upper 1% of whatever that even is supposed to mean, part of the state of Texas where we want to live. They are a sincere couple who sincerely wanted to help the poor when they wanted to and on their terms. Okay? They did not want to lay down their dreams. They wanted to do it their way. And by the way, I don't know how many other mission boards that they approached with this idea, but my understanding to this day, they're doing really well on their dreams. Not so much on the foreign mission field. Number 7, we see the third reason that I have listed here that is a problem within the church. The first was relationships. The second one was responsibilities. The third is religion. And what I mean by that is the type of discipleship ideology that we might have. One is to minimize our losses. Why do we disciple? Because we want to minimize our losses. The goal of that type of strategy is self-retention. Let's save our tree. Let's save the life of our tree so it doesn't wither and die. The second is to maximize our benefits. The strategy of discipleship of our people is self-protection. Let's not just save our tree, let's grow our tree. Nothing wrong with saving trees, nothing wrong with growing trees if we're talking about local New Testament churches. But the third strategy of discipleship is centered around the attracting materialized results. And that goal is self-promotion. What can we do to artificially stimulate our tree? And we could talk more about these things, but I hope that you get the gist of the idea. Hey, we just don't want our kids to go off the rails. And that's our goal for discipleship. Or, you know what? We're going to train our people to be our Sunday school teachers, our church workers, our janitors, and these things and the other. Do we need to do that? Absolutely. Please nod your heads. Yes, we need to do that. Why? Because all of our church people are not going to go to the unreached. Would to God that they would go. 90% of them, honestly. There's more stories I read about the Moravians is that when they would send, for years, they would send in upwards of 40% of their congregations to whole families on ships. They started purchasing sailing ships for the amount of people that they were going to unreached, uttermost islands in the Pacifics where they would never be seen again, though they would be sending back regular reports. 40% of their congregations, and the 60% that stayed behind, they worked for the purpose of supporting them to stay there. And that's what their goals were. I'm not advocating the way that the Moravians did one thing or another. I'm just saying that they had a hold on God's promises concerning being focused on the uttermost while not forgetting the ever close. And so whether we revisit our discipleship strategies of our churches and recognizing or admitting, whatever it might be, maybe not, that really our goal has been, hey, let's not lose our kids. That's the whole thing. We just want them to be good fathers and mothers and kids and not go off the deep end. We want them to stay in church. There is a morale to that. There is an integrity to that. I like that, but it's not what the goal of discipleship is, the end of that, as we find in the Scriptures. Neither is it self-protection. I want to continue to grow my tree here to become a greater majesty or a greater kingdom. Listen, I'm not mocking that. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong, but I am saying it's not the end goal of missions, not the focus of it. But if the third one, the goal is self-promotion, how can we artificially stimulate tree? Now I think I have a problem with that strategy. But I'm not going to talk about it right now because I want to move on to the three engine troubles. The three engine troubles. What are the internal problems? The first one is paralysis. The second one is priorities. And the third is pornography. Why are individuals not surrendering to long-term career missions in hard testing places, not just as individuals, but as families? Number one is paralysis. And I'm going to give you these words. You just jot them down. Number one, what are they afraid of? The unknown. They're afraid of the unknown. Number two, they're afraid of the sacrifice. You could say what you want. You could call their faith into question, their commitment into question. But when the rubber meets the road, there is a sacrifice of what we have to what we will have when we're on the field that's just scary. And it's debilitating to some people. Number three, loneliness. We're afraid of loneliness. And unless you've experienced the kind of loneliness that is involved in living and ministering on another planet as a family unit, then it's difficult to describe. Number four is the fear of man. When the Scriptures say, I will not fear what man can do unto me, let me just tell you, that is as much of a declaration of what I hope that God will allow me to do as much as it is just declaring how much faith that one has. I will not fear what man can do unto me. When you are put in a country and in a place, in a region, in a culture, in a language, that you do not know what man might do unto you. And kidnapping is not even close to being the worst. Number five, another fear, the fear of lack. The fear of lack. And I don't just mean the lack of Hershey bars or the lack of fresh coffee. It might be serious to some things, or the lack could be the lack of friendship. Could be the lack of camaraderie, could be the lack of electricity. We would go during blackout and brownout season in Tanzania, outside of the city, usually between 14 and 26 hours without electricity. And so we would have a generator, but sometimes you can't get a generator, not a reliable one. So going without, that is lack, especially when things are unpredictable. Number six would be the fear of death. The fear of death. Under priorities, a second engine problem that is to deal with. Under priorities, that is the fostering. The first one is that we prioritize peace. We prioritize peace. Listen, the mission field is territory which Satan has long controlled, especially in the unreached, and he's not going to get up the ground without a fight. Now, we have spiritual superiority, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't have influence. And so he will attack, and he does attack the weakest link within a family unit. That might be you. It might be your wife. It might be one or all of your children. It might be multiple attacks at once. In order to create an idea that is different, that causes contention within the family. And so it's much easier, instead of trying to overcome your wife's doubts and fears, that you take the pathway of peace, of least resistance, the pathway of peace. Especially if they grew up in a family where dad had different ministry priorities than mom, and there was rarely peace. They might hunger and desire after peace. Priorities, peace. They don't want the fight. Number 2, protection. They don't want the danger. We prioritize protection. Now listen, this is what I mean by protection, because we have 2 different ideas. If someone's bombing your house, you want to get to a place that's very well protected. That means you want to hide, right? But that's not what we're talking about. That's the priority here. The priority of protection, to want to hide in order to keep you and your family safe. That's admirable, but it is not what the Lord is talking about when he said in the Old Testament, the horse is prepared against the day of battle, but safety, protection is of the Lord. It's not hiding at home or on the rooftop like David did. It's talking about safety that is in the battle. Protection. So we're not talking about a full frontal, well-prepared protection as you go into battle, that being priority, that is a heart problem. We're talking about the type of protection that says, I am not going to take my family into a third world situation, but when you prioritize the saving of your life rather than the losing of it, then the protecting by hiding is not admirable. Peace, don't want the fight. Protection, don't want the danger. Possessions, don't want the loss. Our priorities are the possessions. Looking back at Luke chapter 14, we see that in Jesus' parable as a roadblock to people responding to the invitation to the feast. Right? Listen, I bought some land. Listen, I've got oxen to train. Possessions, they don't want the loss. And number 4, we'll stop with number 4, and that is the priority of professions. I don't want the change. The job that I am headed for or that I have, I don't want the change. I'm settled in that. So the priorities are, they keep people from surrendering and going to the mission field. Paralysis, fears, they keep people from surrendering and going to the mission field. Number 3, pornography. It keeps people from surrendering and going to the mission field. Now listen, if there are a percentage of people in your church you don't know that they are addicted or regular or semi-regular viewers of pornography, you don't want them to try to go to the mission field. I understand that, but this is the point. Most people are not going to want to go to the mission field when pornography is a part of their life, because it zaps them of their confidence, and it should. It zaps them of their spiritual nature of living the Christian life in victory. Listen, and it should. But it brings them to a point where they say, I can't go, so I'll be a part of our church's philosophy of renting out our responsibility to hire missionaries from other places to go so that we don't have to produce them here. 93% of boys and 70% of girls have accessed porn online, according to Josh McDowell and the Barna Research Group. Did you hear those statistics? Listen, this is my point. The world that we live in today, and you know this, it's a different world. It's a different world. There's no reason why every device that we have, in whatever form that it comes in, and in our congregations and our children or whoever, shouldn't have covenant eyes or I forget the other 2. I have another one that's on this. Why? Because this is an Apple product, and it is way too simple to get around covenant eyes on Apple products where it's not on Samsung products. And so we had to research and discover what works best for which device. But listen, when kids, young access, 93, I didn't say 93% of men, I said 93% of boys, 70% of girls. Now in the book where I got these stats from, they even give age brackets, 8 to 12 years old. high percentage of young people who either out of curiosity or was introduced by someone else or accidentally went to something, and then all of a sudden they got an accidental dose of marijuana or cocaine for the first time. And what happens after that? Easy access. The Freedom Fight, an Evangelical Future Leaders Report. I'll read to you from page number 8 from this book, which is called The Healing Church, written by Sam Black. It's a Covenant Eyes resource, what churches get wrong about pornography and how to fix it. On page number 8, we read this. In 2019, the Freedom Fight surveyed Christian college students who said their faith, what kind of college students? Christian college students who said their faith was very important to them. And of this group, 89% of college men involved in collegiate ministry said that they watch porn. 63% said that they watch porn weekly. 51% of these future potential Christian leaders said that they believe that they are addicted to pornography. 3 factors you find out in reading this book in almost irreversible, that result in almost irreversible addiction, because God does miracles in transforming mankind from inside out, but almost irreversible addiction. Number 1, early exposure. And by early exposure, he means age 8 to 11. Number 2, going through traumatizing life circumstances. The thought process, when analyzing the thought process of people, it's the idea that there are things about their life that they have gone through that they can't control. They're experiencing ongoing things in their life that they can't control. In pornography, they feel like they are in control. And number 3, repeated escapism. Early exposure, life's trauma. Number 3, repeated escapism. You could put beside that entertainment. I would tend to add a 4th, especially after having the privilege of hearing Pastor Chris talk on a number of occasions, and that would be this. Cultural acceptance and identity. Cultural acceptance and identity. Can I tell you there's a pornography culture? There's a culture. It's a culture. We have an all-time low of people surrendering for the mission field, being sent to the mission field, or staying on the mission field. They lack the power. They lack the character. And that either keeps them from it or removes them early. Now, I'm not telling you that a percentage of missionaries who you see coming off the field right now, it's pornography related, but it can be. And as a director, I just happen to be in a place where I know more stories than what you probably will ever know. And I could tell you of someone who was not with GFF, and that doesn't mean anything when I say someone who was not with GFF, other than the fact that I didn't go through this experience firsthand. Someone else, firsthand knowledge related to me, was where the family found out that the husband had been addicted to hardcore pornography for a long period of time. And his wife knew about it, but didn't know what to do about it because of the shame factor. But when it came out to be known in the group that was serving on the mission field, it was, from all I understand, held with tact and grace, but they had to leave the mission field. And when they came home off of the mission field, it came out why they came off the mission field. And the wife could not handle the pain of losing ministry and family and a personal reputation, name. Now she's known by something else rather than who she is. And after some period of time, she could not handle it. She did not reach out to anyone for help, and she committed suicide. 3 engine troubles: paralysis, fearing; priorities, fostering; pornography, fawning. And so that is what I have for that. I'm only